attacks on Iran or anything of that nature, because the President's made clear he prefers diplomacy and an outcome of negotiated settlement. Now, we're dealing with radical Shia clerics, okay? We're dealing with people who make geopolitical decisions on the basis of pure theology, and it's a complicated thing. I mean, no one's ever been able to do a successful deal with Iran, but we're going to try. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be traveling, I think they're traveling right now, to have important meetings, and we'll see how that turns out. And we'll always comply with the applicable laws of the United States in terms of involving Congress in any decisions. But right now, we're not talking about any of that. We are postured in the region for one simple reason, and that is that we understand that there could be threats to our forces in the region. We've seen them be threatened in the past, and we want to make sure that we have sufficient capacity to defend them if, God forbid, that were to happen. We'll follow whatever the law is on it, and it depends on the circumstance that lead to it. But right now, we're talking about negotiations. We are focused on negotiations. That's what we're focused. The President's made that clear. If that changes, it'll be obvious to everyone, and obviously, whatever the law requires us to do, we'll do. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for welcoming us. This is a follow-up, as you said, to a meeting we had not too long ago in Florida, in my home state, with the President of the United States. And in the aftermath of that meeting, we discussed some things during that meeting regarding a specific purchase of airplanes. There were some impediments to it. We were able to resolve those, and we're happy that that got resolved, because it's an example of how this direct engagement could lead to more things we can achieve together. In fact, that meeting happened the day after a deal was signed with Westinghouse and with our Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, to lay the groundwork for this energy opportunity, which is so incredible. I use these things only to illustrate the importance of this direct engagement. We both have excellent teams and people that work very hard and communicate all the time, but there is no replacement for that direct level of engagement. And engagement in Central Europe is what you can expect to see more of from the United States of America. Mr. Prime Minister, you mentioned the Visegrad Group, the V4. It is something we are eager to engage with as a forum in which we can find areas where we can work together and achieve cooperation. You mentioned something else, which I don't know why it ever became controversial, but it's important to remind everybody of. It is the view of the President of the United States, President Trump, and of the United States under his presidency, that we expect every country in the world, to act in their national interest. That is what countries are supposed to do. That is what the leaders of their countries are. I don't know why that is like a strange consideration. The fact of the matter is we view policy the exact same way. Now, when our national interests are aligned, when the national interests of the United States, for example, and the national interests of Slovakia are aligned, this is an extraordinary opportunity for cooperation and for partnership. Where there might be some misalignment, well, that's where the relationship comes in. That's where the partnership comes in. That's where we try to accommodate one another and find a way forward. There's nothing controversial about that, at least not as long as President Trump is in the White House. And we believe that within the area of common alignment, there are so many things we can work on together that are good for your country, good for our country, but frankly, good for Europe and good for the world. I also appreciate your input with regards to the war in Ukraine. It is important that we take as many viewpoints. Your viewpoint, and the viewpoint that you've expressed both to me and publicly as well, is one that's informed by both your geography and by your history. And it's a very important point of view to take into account in the broader context. As I said yesterday, in response to some questions in Munich, we view the United States' role as one of trying to facilitate an end to a very deadly, very bloody, very, very costly war. It was horrible suffering. What's happening in Kyiv right now is horrifying. You know, people in the coldest part of the year, not going without electricity and energy. This is nothing positive about that. The death, regardless of what the numbers are on both sides, way too high. And the President has spent a year at the highest levels of our government trying to find whether we can be facilitators of a negotiated end to this terrible conflict. And it is something that we care about, but it is something you live next door to. You're on the border. You're right there. You face, and not only do you have to face the consequences of the war, but you also have to face the benefits or the consequences of the peace. And so we appreciate your input in that regard. We talked about a lot of things we have an opportunity to work together on. Energy is one of them. I think you have an opportunity as a nation, not just because you can generate energy, to also be in a very advantageous role when it comes to new technologies like artificial intelligence, as an example. It's an opportunity there. There's a very energy-dependent industry. And so it's something we can work together on. We're always talking about military sales, and this is important. We're very happy that the F-16 program is your program of choice. We hope you'll consider some others as well that we can work together on, because apart from one of the key components of any country's national interest is the ability to protect their people. There is no more important obligation of any government than the ability to protect your own people and your own nation. This is why, by the way, we talk about the importance of our partners having capabilities in NATO. Every time we say this, people, they go crazy. They think, oh, that means you're going to abandon NATO, you're going to abandon your allies. I think the point we're making is that the stronger our allies are, the stronger we are collectively. The stronger we are collectively. And so we want to play a positive role in that regard, and you're doing many good things in that space, and we want to thank you and want to continue to work with you on that. So there are many things that we have an opportunity to work together on, but first, thank you for receiving me here on a Sunday, and I try never to burden people on Sundays. It's an important day for me because of my faith, and I know for many of you as well, but I thank you for opening this space to us on this day, because we wanted to show, and we are showing, and we are going to show in the weeks and months and years to come, that under President Trump, this administration is going to make not just Slovakia, but Central Europe, a key component of how we engage the continent and the world. And that we are not just going to engage in meetings and pleasantries, but in concrete actions that we will take together in ways that are beneficial to your people and our people, in ways that are beneficial to your country and our country. I'm very excited about this opportunity. I know the President is as well. That's why I'm here. When did we meet? It wasn't too long ago. It was just a few weeks ago.
Yes, a few weeks.
A few weeks, and here we are. So, and we'll be back, and we'll be sending others back. And I think some members of your team are going to be coming to Washington this week to have a conversation. So you're going to get used to seeing us, and you're going to get used to dealing with us, because we're very happy to be here, and we look forward to working with you very closely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Teraz je priestor pre otázky. Poprosím prvú otázku Slovenskú televíziu.
Dobrý deň, Katarína Chovančáková, Slovenská televízia a rozhlas. Pán minister, Spojené štáty minulý týždeň predali velenie 2 štruktúr NATO Európanom. Hovorí sa o možnom sťahovaní amerických vojakov z Európy. Zaznievajú názory, že NATO je mŕtve. Aká je pozícia Spojených štátov v NATO a v rámci spolupráce Slovenska a Spojených štátov v obrane? Pán premiér, hovorili ste aj o obrannej dohode, ktorej podpísanie ste v minulosti kritizovali. Chceli ste ju zrušiť, potom ste pripustili nejaké zmeny. Bola aj táto téma? Ďakujem.
Do you want me to go first? Okay. On NATO, I don't understand. The United States has thousands and thousands of troops deployed to the NATO mission. And we've made very clear, I think it was made very clear at the summit just a few days ago at the meeting of the defense minister level, we're not leaving NATO. We're not leaving. I mean, we may move a couple thousand troops from one country to another, but this has always been the case. This has always happened. By the way, we are not threatened or feel it is hostile to see NATO grow in its own capabilities, not independent of the United States, in conjunction with the United States. We don't think it's a negative thing that other countries have more influence in NATO, other partner nations have more influence in NATO, or that other countries within NATO have more capability. We view that as a positive. I see it reported yesterday in some places, oh, the Europeans are very upset. They're going to be less dependent on America now. We don't want Europe to be dependent. Now, we're not asking Europe to be a vassal of the United States. We want to be your partner. We want to work with Europe. We want to work with our allies. We want to work in cooperation with you. And our point has been and continues to be, the stronger you are, both on an individual basis in terms of countries and collectively as an alliance, the stronger the members of NATO are, the stronger NATO is. That's not minus the United States. That's just common sense. Okay? If you have an alliance made up of countries, the stronger all those members are, the stronger the alliance is. And we want the alliance to be so strong that no one will ever dare test it. No one will ever dare challenge it. So we welcome any measures that are taken to strengthen the alliance by the individual members, and we see that as a very positive thing.
Chcem len povedať, že otázka, na ktorú sa pýtate, alebo agenda, nebola predmetom našich rozhovorov, ale nepochybne podpredseda vlády, minister obrany vám poskytne informáciu o tom, že kde sú rozhovory na túto tému, lebo rozhovory na túto tému prebiehajú, ale nie, dnes to nebolo predmetom rokovania.
Ďakujem pekne. Poprosím druhú otázku, Washington Post.
Thanks very much. Mr. Secretary, will the Trump administration consult and inform Congress in advance if it decides to attack Iran or remove the supreme leader? It's a question on the minds of many, given the major potential consequences of a new war in the Middle East. And also, 5 European countries issued a joint statement saying Alexei Navalny was most likely poisoned by a toxin found in South American frog. How come the United States didn't join the statement? Any response to it?
Yeah,
and then, Mr. Prime Minister, sorry to interrupt. Thank you for your hospitality. On Venezuela, you strongly opposed America's removal of Maduro by force, saying it demonstrates a deepening breakdown of the international order. Do you still feel that way, given where we're at now? And also, you've denied saying that you were worried about President Trump's psychological state following your meeting with him in Mar-a-Lago. Can you explain how this was potentially misinterpreted?
Let me go first on your question. I'm not going to talk about attacks on Iran or anything of that nature because the president's made clear he prefers diplomacy and an outcome of negotiated settlement. Now, we're dealing with radical Shia clerics. Okay, we're dealing with people who make geopolitical decisions on the basis of pure theology, and it's a complicated thing. I mean, no one's ever been able to do a successful deal with Iran, but we're going to try. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be traveling. I think they're traveling right now to have important meetings, and we'll see how that turns out. And we'll always comply with the applicable laws of the United States in terms of involving Congress in any decisions. But right now, we're not talking about any of that. We are postured in the region for one simple reason, and that is that we understand that there could be threats to our forces in the region. We've seen them be threatened in the past, and we want to make sure that we have sufficient capacity to defend them if, God forbid, that were to happen. We'll follow whatever the law is on it, and it depends on the circumstance that would lead to it. But right now, we're talking about negotiations. We are focused on negotiations. That's what we're focused. The president's made that clear. If that changes, it'll be obvious to everyone, and obviously, whatever the law requires us to do, we'll do. With regards to your question about the frog toxin, no, it's a very serious thing. Look, those countries came to that conclusion. They coordinated that. We chose. Doesn't mean we disagree with the outcome. It wasn't, our endeavor. Sometimes countries go out and do their thing based on the intelligence they've gathered. We obviously are aware of the report. It's a troubling report. We're aware of that case of Mr. Navalny, and certainly it's, we don't have any reason to question it, or we're not disputing or getting into a fight with these countries over it, but it was their report, and they put that out there. And let me just make one more point, because I think you asked him a question in order to, see if you can get him against us with something about, you criticize. A lot of countries didn't like what we did in Venezuela. That's okay. That was in our national interest. I'm sure there's something he'll do one day that we don't like, and we'll say, hey, we didn't like you did this. So what? That doesn't mean we're not going to be friends, we're not going to be partners, we're not going to be able to cooperate with one another. Countries express their opinion all the time. We have very close allies that didn't like what we did in that regard. I can tell you what, it was successful. We're proud of it. It was necessary because the guy was a narco-terrorist, and we made him a bunch of offers, and he chose to toil them out. And look what's happened in Venezuela in the 6 weeks since he's been gone. Okay, now it's got a long way to go. There's still much work that needs to be done, but I can tell you Venezuela is much better off today than it was 6 weeks ago. So, we're very proud of that project. And, I know some will disagree and didn't like, but irrespective, I think everyone can now agree that Venezuela has an opportunity at a new future that wasn't there 6 weeks ago.
Pán redaktor, ďakujem za vaše otázky a nemám žiadny dôvod sa vyhýbať odpovedi na vaše otázky. Viete, vždy, keď niekomu vadí, ako sa Slovensko suverénne správa, tak sa automaticky snaží vytvárať prekážky takémuto suverénnemu správaniu sa. Nebojte sa, nevyhnem sa vaše otázky, len použijem iný príklad. Rozhodol som sa suverénne v duchu našej suverénnej politiky, že sa zúčastním na oslavách 80. výročia konca druhej svetovej vojny a víťazstva nad fašizmom v Moskve. A mal som na to 1000 dobrých dôvodov, pretože bola to Červená armáda, ktorá oslobodzovala Slovensko v rokoch 1944 a 1945. Či veríte alebo neveríte, ale 2 členské štáty Európskej únie, 2 členské štáty NATO, naši partneri, mi nedovolili preletieť cez ich územie do Moskvy. Nepamätám si, že by mi niekto z americkej administratívy hovoril, že nechoď tam. Keď som išiel na oslavy konca druhej svetovej vojny do Číny, tak som bol šokovaný, ako celá Európska únia odignorovala tieto oslavy, čisto z politických, ideologických dôvodov. Ja som mal 1000 dôvodov dobrých ísť do Číny, aj som išiel. A potom sa mi to zdá také zvláštne, že keď sa stretnem neformálne s niektorými mojimi kolegami, tak sa ma pýtajú potichu, no čo ti povedal ten prezident Putin a čo ti povedal ten prezident Xi Jinping. My musíme viesť dialog, pán redaktor. My sa musíme rozprávať. Rozhovory nám vytvárajú priestor na získavanie vzácnych informácií. Presne ako nahováram teraz, musíme viesť dialog s Ruskou federáciou, musíme viesť dialog s ruským prezidentom Vladimírom Putinom. Ak nebudeme viesť dialog, tak nemôžeme tvrdiť, že máme záujem ukončiť vojnový konflikt, ktorý dnes vidíme na Ukrajine. A takto sa dostávam k vašej otázke. Jednoducho, nie každému sa páči, že sme suverénne nadviazali komunikáciu, pokiaľ ide o spoluprácu v jadrovej energetike, tak prišli klebety, výmysly. Ja sa nebudem nimi ani zaoberať, pretože vždy to tak je. Keď urobí suverénna slovenská vláda nejaké rozhodnutie, ktoré je v súlade s našou politikou na všetky 4 svetové strany a niekomu tu vadí, tak sa robia prekážky. Vymýšľa sa, klebetí sa a robí sa zle. To je odpoveď na druhú časť vašej otázky. Pokiaľ ide o prvú časť vašej otázky, a to je otázka Venezuely. Slovensko je krajina, ktorá má 5,5 milióna obyvateľov a nedá sa porovnávať ekonomicky s veľmocami, ktoré tu dnes máme. A my dôsledne vychádzame, pán redaktor, z určitých princípov. Poprvé náš princíp prvý je, že máme prioritne záujem na mierovej spolupráci. Na miery. Aj preto mám úplne iné názory na vojnu na Ukrajine. Ja nepodporujem vojnu na Ukrajine. A naďalej tvrdím, že sú tu niektoré členské štáty Európskej únie, ktoré si želajú, aby vojna pokračovala. Chcem súčasne povedať, že držíme sa zásady nezasahovať do vnútorných záležitostí iných krajín. Viete, čo je smiešné, keď idem navštíviť Čínu, máme vynikajúce strategické partnerstvo a novinári sa ma pýtajú, či som vytýkal Číne spôsob riadenia vnútorných vecí. Každá krajina má právo vybrať si svoju cestu. To je ďalšia zásada, ktorou sami riadíme. Potom je to samozrejme tretia zásada, a to je otázka medzinárodného práva. Na niektoré veci máme iný názor. Pokiaľ len tak Spojené štáty americké nie sú signatárom Medzinárodného trestného tribunálu. My sme. Možno aj na iné veci máme rozdielne názory, ale to sme predsa na úvod zadefinovali. Tam, kde máme rovnaké názory, tam nás to spája. Kde máme rozdielne názory, poďme sa o tom rozprávať, viesť negociáciu a dôjsť k nejakému záveru. Čiže všetky postoje, ktoré my formulujeme, vychádzajú z týchto princípov. To je napríklad dôvod, pán kolega, prečo my sme doteraz neuznali Kosovo. Lebo sme presvedčení, že Kosovo vzniklo v rozpore s medzinárodným právom. Ale nemali sme problém, tak ako sme povedali svoj názor na Venezuelu, povedať v prípade vojny na Ukrajine, že použitie vojenskej sily na Ukrajine je porušením medzinárodného práva. Ja nemám inú možnosť, len sa vyjadrovať na rovnaké situácie rovnakým spôsobom, ale ja absolútne oceňujem, pretože vidíme to po dlhom čase, zdravý rozum, pragmatizmus v zahraničnej politike. Toto tu chýbalo. A toto si myslím je ten najcennejší príspevok, ktorý priniesol americký prezident do zahraničnej a svetovej politiky. Zdravý rozum, pragmatizmus a nehľadiete na záujmy iných. Každý si musí predovšetkým hľadiť na svoje vlastné záujmy, národno-štátne záujmy, ale za predpokladu, že to bude viesť k mierovému spolunažívaniu jednotlivých národov a štátov.
Ďakujem pekne. Poprosím ďalšiu otázku, televízia TA3.
Dobrý deň, Robert Zorák, TA3. My first question is for Mr. Secretary. Mr. Secretary, yesterday in Munich you said, and you repeated it basically today here, that...
Can you hold the mic up just a little bit? There
Yeah,
you go.
I'm sorry. You said yesterday in Munich and as well as today that it's very important for every alliance to have all of the members very strong, and you support it. At the same time, before your visit of Bratislava and Budapest, you said that this is kind of strengthening the ties with so-called cooperative allies. Who are the non-cooperative allies from your point of view? And isn't this kind of creation of a two-tier EU or the policy of carrot and stick? Moja druhá otázka je pre pána premiéra. Včera pán minister Rubio povedal tiež, že podľa Washingtonu Rusko nemá veľmi záujem na ukončení vojny. Vy sám rád opakujete, že máte iný názor na vojnu na Ukrajine, než je všeobecne v Európe. Ako ste si vyjasnili túto otázku v rozhovore s pánom ministrom?
Yeah. I think I followed your question. Let me just briefly say, I don't know about look, I'm not going to use this press conference to attack this member of NATO or that member of NATO in terms of what they're doing or not doing with regards to the alliance. I was giving a speech about our relationship, the transatlantic alliances, they call it, which on the military front is largely built on NATO, and on the commercial and economic front is built through the European Union, and obviously to non-members of the European Union then through bilateral agreements with them. And the core point of my speech yesterday remains that our relationship to Europe as a continent, the transatlantic relationship, is not just a military alliance. It is not just a commercial alliance or a trade alliance. If it was just built on commerce and military, then this is very transactional. And it's only going to be an alliance as long as it's mutually beneficial in that regard. The point of my argument yesterday was that our transatlantic alliance, as it's been called, is built on something even more important and more enduring, and that is the ties we have as people, cultural ties, historical ties, religious ties, direct descendants in many cases, our language, etc., shared experience. And that's the point of it. And as far as, if you want to talk about NATO specific, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a mystery. This has been something the President's talked about since this first administration as 45th President of the United States, and that is that he wants NATO to be stronger. And in order for NATO to be stronger, the member states have to be stronger. That's the point. I think we're headed in a good path in that regard. I think we've seen a tremendous amount of progress, and we'll continue to see progress in that direction, I hope, because it makes the alliance stronger. And asking member states of NATO to be stronger is not a threat to say, well, if you're not stronger, then we're going to, it's to point out to everybody that it is a stronger alliance. We are collectively stronger when we are individually stronger on what our capabilities we bring. And every nation has a unique situation. Every nation that's a member of the coalition of NATO has, in some cases, some strategic advantages, special things that they can bring to the table that perhaps another member state cannot. That has to be taken into account as well.
Ďakujem za otázku, pán kolega. Mám veľkú výhodu, pretože ja nemusím rozmýšľať, čo poviem, akú odpoveď, lebo poviem to isté, čo hovorím stále od samého začiatku. A určite by to mohol potvrdiť aj pán minister zahraničnej veci, čo som dnes povedal. Európska únia, alebo niektoré členské štáty únie sú v pasci. A tá pasca je v tom, že čelíme bezprecedentnej kríze Európskej únie, pokiaľ ide o konkurencieschopnosť. Naozaj máme problém. Európska únia je ekonomicky v hlbokej kríze a pokiaľ si nepovieme, že sme prijali nezmyselné ideologické klimatické ciele, tak sa z tejto krízy nikdy nedostaneme. A v tejto situácii, pán kolega, je veľmi ťažké niektorým členským štátom povedať, urobili sme chybu pri vojne na Ukrajine. Veď stratégia bola veľmi jasná. Už v apríli, 3 mesiace po začiatku vojny, na stole v Istanbule bol pripravený dohovor, ktorý mohol vojnu ukončiť. A prišli niektorí západní politici, predovšetkým z Európy, ktorí povedali, nesmiete to urobiť. Lebo si mysleli, že cez túto stratégiu vojny, podporovania Ukrajiny, sankcií, pôžičiek sa ekonomicky a politicky Rusko oslabí. Dnes všetci vieme, že táto stratégia nefunguje. Ale krajiny, ktoré túto stratégiu podporovali od samého začiatku, nemajú odvahu sa priznať a povedať, stačilo. Pán redaktor, hovorili sme o číslach, že koľko je reálne obetí tejto vojny. Tie čísla sa rôznia, sú také a sú aj onaké. Fakt je ten, zoberte si pero a papier a napíšte si to a keď sa tu na konci tohto roka stretneme, tak vás budem s tým konfrontovať. Európska únia poskytuje teraz pôžičku 90 miliárd eur pre Ukrajinu. Z toho, prosím, opravte, má aj 60 miliárd na zbrane a 30 miliárd má ísť na fungovanie Ukrajiny ako také. Ja som hrdý, že som na Európskej rade odmietol účasť na tejto vojenskej pôžičke. Viete, čo sa stane? V decembri budeme všetci rátať ďalšie 100 000 mŕtvych na strane ruskej a na strane ukrajinskej. A jediným výsledkom bude, že Rusko bude hlbšie v území Ukrajiny. O čom je celá táto stratégia? Čiže ja nemením názor, som presvedčený, že vojna je nezmyselná, že konflikt na Ukrajine nemá vojenské riešenie. Nemá vojenské riešenie. Ak sa v tomto konflikte bude pokračovať bez záujmu sa rozprávať, tak výsledkom budú iba 100 000 mŕtvych ľudí a silnejšie postavenie Ruskej federácie. Pán kolega, 20. sankčný balík sa pripravuje teraz. Koľko tých sankčných balíkov má byť, aby sa zastavil postup ruskej armády? Má byť 100? 150? Ja sa domnievam, že tak, ako sme vymysleli 20 sankčných balíkov, sme mali vymyslieť v Európskej únii 20 mierových iniciatív. Európska únia mala vynaložiť celé úsilie, celú energiu. Je nás skoro 500 miliónov. Ešte stále sme ekonomicky celkom silní, hoci máme krízu. A mali sme presviečať bojujúce strany, aj Rusko a Ukrajinsku. Stopnite to, zastavte to. Poďme nájsť riešenie, ktoré bude pre obidve strany priateľné. Takže nič nové som nepovedal, opakujem od samého začiatku môj postoj, ktorý je iný. Nie všetci partneri v Európskej únii so mnou súhlasia, ale ja si myslím, že je úlohou politika, ktorý sa považuje za suverénneho, že hovorí suverénne názory, ak je o nich pochopiteľne presvedčený.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Posledná otázka. Bloomberg.
Thank you. Secretary...
I just did an interview with you guys. This guy gets all these. How's this? All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you for more of your time, Secretary Rubio.
No, thank you. That's what I'm here.
Wanted to ask you, you met in the last several days with the leaders of Greenland and Denmark in Munich. Is there agreement or acceptance from the U.S. side that the issue of ceding sovereignty of Greenland to the U.S. is no longer on the table, or that Greenland will not ultimately become part of the U.S.? And on Syria, you also met with the foreign minister in Munich. Several Republican congressional leaders have talked about serious concerns over al-Shara's ability to fulfill the conditions that you had laid out in May of 2025, and saying he's moving backwards on some of those regarding treatment of minorities, the role of foreign fighters. Do you share that assessment? And was that something you conveyed to the foreign minister? And then Prime Minister Fico, can you clarify the situation regarding oil supplies via the Druzhba pipeline? And do you have any information on why the flows have not resumed? Or can you confirm Hungary's claim that Ukraine has indeed repaired the damaged section of the pipeline, but that there is no political will from the Ukrainian side to restart that flow? And lastly, on energy, Prime Minister...
That's like 4 questions. How did I get 4 questions?
Just in terms of the...
You guys did a pool or something?
The energy reduction, the energy reliance dependence of Slovakia on Russia, is that something that you're willing, that Slovakia is willing to reduce or end the oil and gas imports, or to increase imports of fuels like LNG from the U.S.? Thank you both so much.
All right. I don't even remember your first question. I think it was about Greenland and Denmark, right? Okay. Yeah, we met with them. We're meeting with them. I'm not going to talk about it. I told you guys we're not going to have this thing back and forth in media and press conferences. We have a good process in place. We're engaging with them. I feel very positive and optimistic that we're on a good trajectory. In the case of Syria, actually, let me point something out. Number one, we met with the foreign minister of Syria. You know who else was there? General Muslim. They came together. The Kurdish leader was there. We put that out. I don't know why that wasn't reported. Interestingly, by the way, I read, and I knew this was going to happen. I told my people to tell you this because I knew this was going to happen. We couldn't go to a Ukraine meeting that they were having, one of the multiple Ukraine meetings that we attend. We couldn't go to one of them. And the reason why we couldn't go to that one with 4 other European countries is because we were meeting with Syria and the Kurds. I couldn't figure out a way how to be in 2 places at the same time. It's a problem many people face. You can't be in 2 places at the same time. So we met with the Syrian foreign minister and with the General Mazloum on behalf of the Kurds, a historic meeting, okay, together in the same meeting. Now, let me say that no one here has ever disputed that the challenge of Syria was going to be a very significant one, okay? We are dealing with elements that, as we've said in the past, we have concerns about things that they have done in the past. But the bottom line was we had 2 choices in Syria. Choice number 1 was to let the place fall apart into 18 different pieces, long-term civil war, instability, mass migration, playground for terrorists, ISIS running all over the place, Iran getting back in. That was choice number 1. Choice number 2 is to try to see if it was possible to work with these interim authorities and with al-Shara and with his team. Guess what? We chose number 2 because it was made sense. Now, is it going to be easy? No. Is it going to be difficult? Absolutely. Is it going to have ups and downs and good days and bad days? No doubt about it. Here's the fact, okay? And I'm not saying that this tells you that we should claim victory and start a parade, but here's the fact. The fact is that when this situation erupted in the northeast of Syria, the president engaged personally, not once but twice with al-Shara, and he said, stop the fighting, so that we can move the ISIS prisoners that are there. Thousands of ISIS prisoners who, by the way, could have broken out and created havoc and chaos. Stop the fighting so that we can move these ISIS prisoners and so that we have more time to work on this reintegration, the integration of the Kurds into the national Syrian forces. And al-Shara did it. Now, he's kept his word up to this point. Obviously, he has to keep doing that. But that's what we've been able to achieve. We've been able to at least get him to agree to do that, and that's been important because we've been able to move those prisoners into Iraq and out of harm's way so that we don't have a massive jailbreak and 4,000 or 5,000 ISIS killers running crazy all over the place and threatening us in the future. And it's given us time to work on this integration agreement, which they have agreed to between the Kurds and the Syrian authorities in Damascus. Now, you have to implement that agreement. That's not going to be easy. And there are other such agreements that they need to reach with the Druze, with the Bedouins, with the Alawis, with all the elements of a very diverse society in Syria. But we think that outcome, as difficult as it's been, is far better than a Syria that would have been broken up into 8 pieces, with all kinds of fighting going on, all kinds of mass migration. So we're very, very positive about that. And as far as members of Congress are concerned, we've worked with them on this. We've kept them informed. We've invited them to many of the meetings. In fact, Ambassador Barrack was in Washington last week briefing the congressional committees, always very blunt and very honest about the challenges involved in executing on this very difficult situation. But we think it's headed in a positive direction, even though it's been tested. There's been some difficult days. Frankly, there's been some days that have been, very concerning. But we like the trajectory. We have to keep it on that trajectory. We've got good agreements in place. The key now is implementation, and we'll be very involved in that regard. Those were my 2 questions, right? Okay.
Pán redaktor, dovolím si spojiť obidve vaše otázky a odpoviem naraz jednou odpoveďou. Keď krajiny bojujú, ako to je v prípade Ukrajiny, tak sa už nehľadí na nič. Používa sa propaganda z jednej strany, z druhej strany. A tak ako Ukrajina obviňuje Ruskú federáciu, že zneužíva energie, ako sú ropa a plyn, na politické účely, tak aj druhá strana zase obviňuje Ukrajinu, že robí to isté. Pán redaktor, my sme pravidelne cez Slovensko ťahali plyn, ktorý išiel cez Ukrajinu na Slovensko do západnej Európy. A zarábali sme na tom na tranzitných poplatkoch okolo 500 miliónov eur ročne. Ukrajina tým, že tranzitovala ruský plyn do Európy, zarábala na tranzitných poplatkoch okolo 800 až 900 miliónov eur ročne. A prišlo ideologické rozhodnutie. Cez Ukrajinu sa nebude ťahať ruský plyn, to znamená, nebude sa ťahať ani cez Slovensko. Pravdepodobne Ukrajine tá miliarda nechýba, pretože dostávajú obrovské príjmy, obrovské pôžičky. To sú 100 milióny, to sú miliardy, to sú jednoducho také sumy peňazí, o ktoré si nevieme ani predstaviť. Za týchto podmienok chcem povedať, že Slovensko sa správa veľmi zodpovedne. Mohli by sme byť urazení a mohli by sme prijať odvetné opatrenia proti Ukrajine. Ale my na Ukrajine nevidíme prezidenta Zelenského. Nevidíme politikov. Ja tam vidím deti, ženy a rodiny, ktoré potrebujú prežiť ťažkú zimu. A preto sme sa rozhodli, že napriek tomu, čo nám Zelenský urobil, že nás obralo 500 miliónov eur ročne, dodávame na Ukrajinu elektrickú energiu, to sú tzv. Špeciálne zásielky elektriny, keď im zlyháva energetický systém. A my im dodávame, či tomu veríte alebo neveríte, aj plyn. Napriek tomu, že z východu na západ už netečie. Pýtate sa súčasne aj na ropu, tak chcem povedať, že je tu rozhodnutie, ktoré sa nazýva Repower EU, ktoré 1. novembra 2027 zastavuje akýkoľvek tranzit ruského plynu do Európy, čo nám spôsobí obrovské ťažkosti. Obrovské ťažkosti. Nechcem to tu teraz vysvetľovať. Ale ako krajina, ktorá sme boli na začiatku rúry, sme na konci rúry. Nemáme k dispozícii prístavy s LNG terminálmi. To nám mimoriadne komplikuje situáciu. A hovorili sme o tom s pánom ministrom zahraničných vecí. Ja si myslím, že pri povojnovom usporiadaní Ukrajiny je treba sa vážne rozprávať o vlastníctve plynovodu, ktorý ide cez Ukrajinu, aby sa nestal naďalej nástrojom pri vydieraní jednotlivých krajín. Teraz k tej rope a k situácii, ktorá je v tomto okamihu. Ukrajina sa domáha členstva v Európskej únii. Sú to krajiny, ktoré nehovoria pravdu Ukrajine a sú to krajiny, ktoré hovoria pravdu Ukrajine. Maďarsko je dlhodobo absolútne férové voči Ukrajine, keď hovorí, že nebudú súhlasiť s členstvom Ukrajiny v Európskej únii. My na Slovensku hovoríme, že môže vstúpiť Ukrajina do Európskej únie za predpokladu, že splní všetky nevyhnutné podmienky. My teraz nemôžeme oklamať Srbsko, nemôžeme oklamať Čiernu Horu, nemôžeme oklamať Albánsko. Tieto krajiny sú 100-krát lepšie pripravené na vstup do Európskej únie, ako je Ukrajina. Ja neviem, pán redaktor, kto zbombardoval ropnú infraštruktúru na Ukrajine. Ja neverím ani jednej, ani druhej strane. Budem veriť len tomu, čo vidím na vlastné oči. Už to bolo toľko klamstiev z jednej aj z druhej strany, že nemám odvahu povedať, kto zbombardoval alebo zničil časť ropnej infraštruktúry. My máme informácie, že už by to malo byť opravené. Len si myslím, že opäť dodávky ropy zo strany Ukrajiny smerom do Maďarska na Slovensko sa stane predmetom politického vydierania. A tlaku na nás, najmä na Maďarsko. Tak teda Maďarsko súhlas s členstvom Ukrajiny v Európskej únii, možno prídu dodávky ropy. Myslím si, že budeme mať k tomu zajtra stretnutie, momentálne dodávky fungujú všetko, pokiaľ ide o výrobky zo Slovnaftu, z rafinérie tu na Slovensku.
Refinery in Bratislava,
Rokujeme
everything
s
works out.
vedením tejto
We're
rafinérie,
discussing things
prijajme
with the
všetky
management
potrebné
of this
opatrenia.
refinery. We'll
Myslím si,
accept
že
all
aj Slovnaft sa
necessary
správa veľmi zodpovedne v tejto
measures.
téme,
I think Slovnaft
ale to, čo sa
refinery
deje
is
dnes
also
okolo ropy,
behaving
vnímam ako politické
properly,
vydieranie
and
smerom
all
Maďarsku
those
kvôli
things regarding
nekompromisnému
oil, I
postoju
think they
Maďarska a
are just a
členstvu
part of
Ukrajiny v
political
Európskej
blackmail
únii.
regarding
Som veľmi
Ukrainian
otvorený a
membership to
priamy
the
a
EU in relation to
nedávam si v
Hungary.
týchto
I'm direct
otázkach
and
národno-štátnych záujmov
in the question
žiadne
of national
servítky pre
interests,
ústa,
I'm
pretože keď je
speaking
ohrozené Maďarsko,
what I believe.
pokiaľ ide o
I'm
ropu,
speaking my mind.
je ohrozené aj
And
Slovensko,
when Hungary is
pretože
threatened
všetku
in
ropu
relation
pre
to oil,
slovenskú
Slovakia
rafinériu
is also threatened
nakupuje
because
Maďarsko,
all
keďže
oil
rafinéria v
Slovak refinery
Bratislave
gets
je
is
vo
bought
vlastníctve
by Hungary because
maďarskej spoločnosti,
Slovak
ktorá sa
refinery
nazýva
is owned
MOL.
by Hungarian
Ďakujem
company
veľmi
called MOL. Thank you very much.
Ďakujeme veľmi pekne.
Thank you very much. This was the last question. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Subscribe to One India and never miss an update. Download the One India app now.